Shalom to those watching this video. I wanted to shed some light on Black awareness and consciousness. Although there's much I wanted to touch base on, I didn't want to make this video too long. As I've stated before in previous videos, when it comes to the problems we have in the Black community, most would like to focus primarily on the financial aspect of things. And as I've mentioned before, when we were doing well in the financial aspect, there was a town called Black Wall Street, a town full of black business and black prosperity. In response to this, racist whites burned this place down and even went as far as to hinder or stop the reconstruction afterwards. Now a little more insight. As one of the most successful and wealthiest black communities in the United States during the early 20th century, it was known as Black Wall Street until the Tulsa race riot of 1921, in which white Tulsans massacred black residents and torched the neighborhood within hours. The riot was one of the most devastating massacres in the history of U.S. race relations, destroying the once thriving Greenwood community. There are many facts that keep us down as a people: drugs, music, media, disease, homosexuality, self-hate, racial mixing, and so on. But the number one aspect that people don't want to hear is reading the Bible or returning to the Bible. This is important because this is your true identity: blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, Samoans, and Brazilians. The Bible is more than just some religious book. It's our history. And for those of you who say the Bible is written by whites, this is wrong. The Bible was written by our ancestors, and all scripture is inspired by the Holy Spirit. We kept records and scrolls before we were exiled of our land, and we left our legacy, which, by the grace of Yahuwah, our Heavenly Father, has been preserved by explorers or nations outside of ourselves. And although some scripture is tampered with or mistranslated in newer versions, it still retains much knowledge and truth we need to know. We kept the Torah, which in our language means instructions. That being said, I'm going to show you a vital reason behind what I'm saying, which ties into society today. If we're constantly being targeted to kill each other, to hate, drugs, homosexuality, getting high, drunk, lust, sin, there's a key to why they want us to perpetuate these things. So let's see why. In the Apocrypha, for those of you unfamiliar, these are books they removed out of the standard Bibles we have today. In the book of Judith, chapter 5, the captain, Heliophanes, inquires of the Canaanites, the Moabites, and the Ammonites about who we were, where we came from, and how to defeat us. So let's see what they said. Judith 5:18. But when they departed from the way which he appointed them, referring to the laws and commandments of our Heavenly Father, they were destroyed in many battles, very sore, were led captive into a land that was not theirs, and the temple of their Elohim was cast to the ground, and their cities were taken by the enemies. Jumping down to verse 20. Now, therefore, my master and governor, now pay attention, if there be any error in this people, and they sin against their Elohim, let us consider that this shall be their ruin. Let us go up, and we shall overcome them. But if there be no iniquity in their nation, let my master not pass by, lest their master, referring to Yahuwah, defends them, and their Elohim before them, and we become a reproach before the world. To succeed as a whole, we need to come back to the Bible, come back to our Heavenly Father, and keep the laws and commandments. Now let's look at the blessings and the curses to confirm this. In the modern Bible, Devarim or Deuteronomy 28, 1 through 15. And it shall come to pass, if you shall hearken diligently unto the voice of Yahuwah your Elohim, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command you this day, that Yahuwah your Elohim will set you on high above all of the nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come on you and overtake you, if you shall hearken unto the voice of Yahuwah your Elohim. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of your body, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your herds, the increase of your cattle, and the flocks of your sheep. Blessed shall your basket and your kneading trough. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. Yahuwah shall cause your enemies that rise up against you to be defeated before your face. They shall come out against you one way, and flee before you 7 ways. Yahuwah shall command the blessing upon you in your storehouses, and in all that you set your hand unto, and he shall bless you in the land which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you. Yahuwah shall establish you a holy people unto himself, as he has sworn unto you, if you shall keep the commandments of Yahuwah your Elohim, and walk in his ways. And all the people of the earth shall see that you are called by the name of Yahuwah, and they shall be afraid of you. And Yahuwah shall make you bountiful in goods, in the fruit of your body, and in the fruit of your cattle, and in the fruit of your ground, in the land which Yahuwah swore unto your fathers to give to you. Yahuwah shall open unto you his good treasure, the heaven, to give the rain unto your land in its season, and to bless all the work of your hand. And you shall lend unto many nations, and you shall not borrow. And Yahuwah shall make you the head, and not the tail. And you shall be above only, and you shall not be beneath. If that you hearken unto the commandments of Yahuwah your Elohim, which I command you this day, to observe and to do them, and you shall not go aside from any of the words which I command you this day, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them. Now, let's look at the curses of disobedience. Verse 15 through 28. I'd like for you to read the rest of this for yourself until verse 68. But it shall come to pass, if you will not hearken unto the voice of Yahuwah your Elohim, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command you this day, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Cursed shall you be in the city, and cursed shall you be in the field. Cursed shall your basket and your kneading trough. Cursed shall be the fruit of your body, and the fruit of your land, the increase of your cattle, and the offspring of your sheep. Cursed shall you be when you come in, and cursed shall you be when you go out. Yahuwah shall send upon you cursing, confusion, and rebuke, and all that you set your hand on to do, until you are destroyed, and until you perish quickly, because of the wickedness of your doings, by which you have forsaken me. Yahuwah shall make the pestilence cleave on to you, until he has consumed you from off the land which you go to possess. Yahuwah shall strike you with a consumption, and with a fever, and with the inflammation, and with fiery heat, and with the sword, and with blight, and with mildew, and they shall pursue you until you perish. And your heaven that is over your head shall be bronze, and the earth that is under you shall be iron. Yahuwah shall make the rain of your land powder and dust. From heaven shall it come down upon you, until you be destroyed. Yahuwah shall cause you to be defeated before your enemies. You shall go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be a terror to all the kingdoms of the earth. And your carcasses shall be food unto all fowls of the air, and unto the animals of the earth, and no man shall frighten them away. Yahuwah will strike you with the boils of Egypt, and with tumors, and with scabs, and with the itch, of which you cannot be healed. Yahuwah shall strike you with madness, and blindness, and confusion of mind. So we see these verses confirm what was said in Judah chapter 5:18 and verse 20. Returning to the Bible because it is our true history and culture, and holds the key to us unifying and finally making sustainable progression.
Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging.
Over the years, I've been collecting artifacts. As a matter of fact, I've been collecting little pencils like this. I've seen alligators on jars. I've seen alligator ashtrays, and I've seen them depicted with kids in it. And I was wondering why the children would be there. As a matter of fact, this particular pencil sharpener, this is a pencil sharpener or a pencil holder with a black head of a baby sitting out of its mouth. I didn't pay any attention. I have been collecting for quite a few years, and I have the posters and things like that about different things. And then one day I was down in Florida. I'd gone down with my wife, and I took a trip for myself off to the Wild Blue Yonder, going out to hunt artifacts. And in my quest to hunt artifacts, I came upon a pawn shop in Sanford, Florida. In the pawn shop was a gentleman who owned it. They went and got him and told him I was there, and I wanted to buy some of the shackles he had hanging around the walls. I asked him, could I buy them? He said no. He didn't want to sell anything. He just wanted me to see it. Then we began to talk. And I asked him, I said, look, please let me buy something. I got to take something from here. He says, no. He says, I don't want to sell anything. He said, but I'm going to the back and I'll sit down. Meanwhile, he came out and came back out and he began to talk to me. He said, he said, you probably don't know this. He said, but years ago, he said, my grandfather, before he died, told me of the things they would do. He said he would go down. He said his grandfather said they would go down and they would take babies with them. I said, what do you mean babies? He says, well, let me tell you. He said the slaves who had babies, they would steal the babies during the course of the day, sometimes when the mothers weren't washing. I said, what do you mean babies? I said, you mean babies like 5 or 6 years old? He says, no. These babies, some would be infants. Some would be a year old. He said some would be toddlers. He said they would grab these children and take them down to the swamp and leave them in pens like little chicken coops. They would go down there at night, take these babies and tie them up because they hunted the big bull alligators. These big bull alligators were not raised on the farms. They were in the wild. These alligators would weigh 600, 700, 800 pounds. Those are the ones they wanted. They would skin them, make the wallets, get the meat, do different things with them. He said, but what they were doing was tie them up, put a rope around their neck and around their torso, around here, and tie it tight. He said, I said, well, what would the babies be doing? He said, well, my grandfather said they'd be screaming. He said, what would you do? He said, just let them scream. He said, what they would do, it would help them to chum the water. He said, when they would throw the babies in tied to this rope, he said, in a matter of minutes, he said, the alligators were on them. He said the alligators would clamp his jaws on that child. And as a matter of fact, once he clamped on him, he was really swallowed. You couldn't see anything but the rope. And we would pull the alligator in and tie his nose and hit him in the head with an axe, a pickaxe. He said we would then drag him to the shore. We'd drag him to the shore and leave him lay, and we would do it again, maybe 2 or 3 times a night. I said, so what do you mean? He said, well, yeah, they were taking these babies and killing them for alligator bait. I said, so all these things I've been collecting, are really, really something that I can really talk about and say they're of a truth by what you say? He said, I'm telling you, he said, nobody wants to talk about it. He said, I'm only telling you because you're here. I may never hear from you again. He said, but these things actually depict the acts that they did to slave babies back in the Bayou country and down the south. They did this. They hunted alligators with these babies. That's why they call it
the Negro Problem in modern democracy. Interestingly, This book was not the result of some mom-and-pop operation. Murdahl had 75 assistants working on this project whose salaries were being paid for by the Carnegie Corporation. And Carnegie had been a major player in the eugenics movement for many years.
Gunnar Murdahl and his wife Alva were both involved in eugenics. They were funded by both the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Corporation. They were also closely linked to a Swedish eugenics program which forcibly sterilized 66,000 people. When you read Chapter 7 of this book, it becomes undeniable that this is a blueprint for the modern eugenics movement that we still see in the United States today. The bottom line is that Gunnar Murdahl believed that not only could blacks not help themselves, he felt that nobody could help them, and the only solution in his eyes was to get rid of them.
Commonly, it is considered a great misfortune for America that Negro slaves were ever imported. The presence of Negroes in America today is usually considered a plight of the nation. Chapter 7, page 166. All white Americans agree that if the Negro is to be eliminated, he must be eliminated slowly, so as not to hurt any living individual Negroes. Chapter 7, page 168. The only way possible of decreasing Negro population is by means of controlling fertility. Chapter 7, page 170. Birth control facilities could be extended relatively more to Negroes than to whites, since Negroes are more concentrated in the lower income and education classes. Chapter 7, page 176.
One thing I find very revealing about Chapter 7 is the first paragraph. Murdahl uses U.S. Census Bureau figures to show that between 1790 and 1940, the black population in the United States increased 17 times. At the same time, those Census Bureau figures show that the white population increased 37 times. However, neither Murdahl nor any other eugenicist wrote anything about what to do about that part of the population that was increasing twice as fast as the black population.
Gunnar Murdahl's book on how to resolve what he called the Negro Problem was published in 1944 by Harper & Brothers in New York. 4 years earlier, the same company, which is today known as HarperCollins, had also published a book by one of the founding members of the American Eugenics Society. At the time that Harper & Brothers published these books, its president was a man named Cass Canfield, who would later become the national president of Planned Parenthood.
To this inhumane, insane population-control tactic, the story has shed a light on a dangerous contraceptive that's now being pushed and administered on women of color all over the world, including right here in the U.S. So here to talk about the use of Depo-Provera and how this is targeting minority populations in both here and abroad, I'm joined now by Randy Short, President and National Spokesperson for the Anti-Depo-Provera Clergy Coalition. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about what you know about the health effects, though, because obviously women were being administered this for years without knowing about them.
Well, the drug was first patented in 1959. By the middle 60s, there were a lot of unethical experimentations done, in particular the Grady Clinic study in Georgia on poor black and poor white women. God knows how many people died. This drug did not get approved until 1993-94, but during that time that was used on women all over. The effects of it are serious: excessive bleeding, osteoporosis, breast cancer, cervical cancer, heart attack, stroke, ectopic pregnancies, excessive weight gain, which can lead to type 1 or 2 diabetes, short or long-term infertility, maternal death. It strips the epithelium, the inner part of the woman's womb, making her more susceptible to all STIs and STDs. Therefore, doubling the chances of getting HIV, AIDS, chlamydia, HPV, gonorrhea, or syphilis. And there are other things that bothers the mental health. One of the things that's come to us, that the group that I work with, the Rebecca Project, is that many women are telling us that they've had mental problems. The FDA in 2004 was so concerned about the dangerous nature of Depo-Provera that they issued a black box warning, which is the most serious warning that can be issued by the FDA about how dangerous this drug is.
And despite this warning, this black box warning, it's still being administered under multiple agencies to multiple countries around the world.
Yes.
Who is administering it? Why? And where?
Well, it's being used primarily in non-white countries. So Muslim countries, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Burma, possibly on the Myanmar minority, all over Africa, Central America and Latin America, and of course in the United States, depending on whose information you look at, it's disproportionately used on African American women. Who's doing it? Planned Parenthood is one of the big purveyors of it. In addition to that, you have the Population Council, you have the International Federation of Planned Parenthood, you have a lot of persons and groups that have a Malthusian view that there are too many people, and therefore they want to reduce the population. They know this drug is deadly, it's cheap, and it makes huge profits for the parent maker, which is Pfizer.
And USAID is also one of the
Yes.
agencies as well.
For 47 years, it's been an unofficial policy of the USAID Office on Population to use or to send abroad dangerous, unsafe, untested, or unapproved drugs. And
you said that this is being obviously disproportionately affecting minority populations.
yes,
If they know that it's deadly, why would they be administering it to minority populations? I mean, what is really this all about here?
there are too many non-white people. If you look at a gentleman by the name of Dr. Ravenholt, who was head of the USAID Office on Population from about 1966 until 1979, he was able to first convince President Johnson that it was in the national and commercial interests of the United States that 1/4 of the women in the developing world be sterilized.
Because what history and the films have been telling the black man is that he's nothing unless he joins the white world. The message used to read, black is nothing, white is beautiful. And for a long time, a lot of black cats spent their lives trying to be white. For instance, hair. Now, some people call straight hair good hair because it looks like white hair. Kinky hair is bad. The man on the right is having his hair cut naturally. The man on the left is having a process job. What the barber is doing is applying harsh chemicals to his head so he'll have straight hair, like those movie stars had.
The mortician or whoever the doctor guy, I think it's the doctor, I don't think he's a mortician, he would tell me, listen, to get your mind off of it, why don't you just, instead of looking at the bodies as if they were something that used to be alive, why don't you pretend to be a doctor and see if you can figure out how each person died? Well, there were a few bodies there who they had the crown of their heads sawed off. It was like a cap. It was like they had it cut off and then you just see the brain. Some of them had the brain on the outside on the table. Sorry if I'm getting gory with this. I'm gonna try not to be too gory, okay? Well, with this one particular black woman, she had like a lot of dark patches, spots in her brain right in here. And to me it looked like someone did a blunt trauma, a blunt force. They hit her with a blunt object against her head. So I said, this woman must have been beaten to death. And so the doctor guy comes over and he looks at the body, he looks at the head, and he goes, no. He says, you talking about those black markings? And he's like, yeah. I said, well, he said, why do you say that? And I said, well, you can also see where it looks spongy. You know how a sponge look? It looks like something was eating away at her brain too. And so I thought that the blunt object like cracked her brain and some of the blood come out. I don't know what the reasoning is, but where these black marks, these dark marks were, there was a little spongy texture in that area. Looks like something was eating slowly away at that part of the brain. And he looked at me nonchalantly and said, no, this is common for black women to have these markings in your head. Now, of course, I'm looking at him like, what are you talking about, black woman? Is this racist thing? What are you doing? What are you talking about? And he looked at me like, he says, the chemicals that you put in your hair, this is what happens to your brain. Now, I am standing there like shocked because I am one of the people who was doing that to her head. And I said, no, perms don't do that to your hair. It can't be that. It has to be dye, or it has to be, hereditary. And so you know what he does? He goes in, he looks at a clipboard, and he goes into these silver refrigerators. That's the only thing I can, or coolers. And he pulls out 2 more bodies. One body is a woman who also has perm hair. Apparently she's a Jane Doe, because no one can find out who she is. She's been there for several weeks, TMI, no. Then they put out another sister, and she has natural hair, okay? As a matter of fact, she had a short bush. So, long story short, because I don't want to get gory, he opens the brain, he opens the cranial of both women, and therefore shows me the brains of both. The woman who did not have a perm, who just had that, it looked like a little small fade, nothing was different with her brain. It was nothing, it was just like a gray matter, just regular brain. The woman who had permed her hair, she had similar, not as much as the other female, the first female I saw, but she did have discolorization, and ironically, differently between the other woman, she still had that little spongy corrosion in her brain area, but it wasn't dark like the other female. And so when he starts showing me, okay, this is common, this type of colorization is usually all up here. And then when I think about it, this is the area we always want to touch up the most. We kind of like keep that kitchen, not so much. But then again, I couldn't really, the brain is not, it's more pronounced here than it is back here. So of course you will see a lot of discolorization and a lot of the corrosion in this area of the brain than any other part of the brain. So when he showed me all this, I freaked out. I freaked out because I'm thinking, oh my God, this could be happening to my brain. I have been wearing perms since I was 10 or 11 or 12 years old.
It's a painful, long process that costs $6 and has to be looked after every couple of weeks. Now, these days, any young black man will find the whole process demeaning. I mean, it's out, even in the ghetto. For a while, it seemed to the black community that the way to escape was to get as rich as possible and look as white as possible. And as affluence came to some black people, all the lessons of history and all the lessons of the movies seemed to be make it on the white man's terms. So the rich black cat took the rich white cat's dreams and tried to walk through the door. I mean, today many middle-class blacks have the education and the bread to buy everything the white man dreams. Every dream but one, getting into the center of the country. When you can't make it, you make up your own. A lot of black women think we ain't ever going to make it.
There's a fallacy in this country that says that any man by his merits can make it. That is not true. Do not believe that. It is not true. Because any man in the society cannot make it. That's where the whole fallacy is. The white man keeps saying to you, if you just stop being black, if you just stop shooting your people on Saturday night, you just stop talking Negro dialect, if you clean yourself up, get yourself a job, you're going to make it in the society. It's not true. I know for myself, I have a master's degree in social work, and I know that people won't accept me. And I was an honor student, and I know I can make it. They won't accept me. They don't discriminate against me because I'm a Christian. They're discriminating against me because I'm black.
Because in the 1960s, black men and black women they were doing what they were supposed to have done for a long time, which was fight together against white supremacy, against racism. And they were doing this with the civil rights movement. So what happened, people had to come in and infiltrate and have a divide and conquer strategy between black men and black women. In 1964, government came in and they pulled black women to the side, and they started to classify black women and women in general as minorities. In 1964, that's the first time they classified women as minorities. So they started to give them set-asides and benefits, and then they created the feminist movement, and a lot of sisters branched off into that, and that kind of created a rift because a lot of sisters stopped fighting for civil rights and they started to fight for women's rights, but women's rights weren't being jeopardized in the black community. Our first priority was racism, and we should have dealt with that first.
That was the white woman's fight with her man, but we took it on. I want to be free. Ain't nobody gonna tell me what to do. And then women started having babies, what they call out of wedlock, and then that got to be okay too. Oh, it's all right. Once it got accepted by society, all of the rest of the people, then it was okay then to just have a baby. In fact, I don't even want him for nothing but to just have a baby. And then we started saying, oh, I'm gonna be the mother and the father. All kind of nonsense. And so what happened was that movement, and there never was a sisterhood in the women's liberation movement between the black woman and the white woman.
Because you have to understand, in the tactic of the art of war, when you want to destroy a stronger enemy, you have to get rid of the cultural perspective of authority. So what do? You have to destroy the man in the society. And that's exactly what they did. I talk about this in my book. You have to destroy the masculine principle, which is the head of the family. That's part of it. The other part is to get rid of the environment and the ways and means for the head or the authority of that family to become and stay the authority and the head of that family, and that is to be the provider and the protector. Take away his means of providing, take away his means of protecting his family, and he no longer has any rights or any kind of power. So when you have done that, you have now undermined the glue that keeps a family together. Men don't have to be men anymore. So what's the best thing to do? Since you're giving so many favors to women, I might as well be a woman.
If whites are involved in their genetic survival and they are threatened by black male masculinity, then it will occur, I have to reduce his masculinity. Yeah, we just recently had the president at Morehouse have to say the male students cannot wear high-heel shoes and dresses and carry purses. So something is happening, again, within the total context of a system of racism, white supremacy. Neely Fuller, who wrote the textbook for victims of racism a number of years ago, in the late mid-70s, he used to say in the system, because he was the first person to talk about racism as a system, and he said that as the system of racism, white supremacy moves on, the system is going to have black men wearing dresses. Now, to hear that in the 70s, people said, oh, this is way out. And here we are. You see, there's some black pediatricians who are saying we are developing epidemic levels of the effeminization of young black males. Well, I say the pants sagging down is just a subconscious invitation for homosexuality. You see, it's revealing the buttocks. See, so the pants are getting lower and lower and lower. The next step is to step out of the pants altogether. And so you step out of the pants, you're going to put on a dress. The effeminization is an essential ingredient of white genetic survival, and the only thing that can prevent it is black people becoming conscious or becoming determined that this is not going to happen to them, because if the black men are destroyed, then the black people are gone, and we have the state of genocide.
That's like when I see that they put every black man in the movies in a dress at some point in their career, I'll be connecting them down like, why all these brothers gotta wear a dress? This happened to me. I'm doing a movie with Martin.
Yeah.
The movie's going good. So I walk in the trailer. I'm like, man, this must be the wrong trailer because there's a dress in here. They come in. The writer comes in. I think he's the writer. He's like, Dave, listen, we got this hilarious scene where Martin's sneaking out of jail. So he disguises you as a prostitute. And he put this dress on. And, huh? What? A prostitute? Nah, I'm not doing that. I don't feel comfortable with that. That should have been in the discussion. What? You don't feel comfortable with it? I mean, it's a hilarious bit. All the greats have done it. So, well, if all the greats have done it, it's kind of hacky, right? You're right. So why don't we just not do it? Because I don't feel comfortable wearing a dress. Oh, come on, Dave. Listen, we got it all set up. We're supposed to shoot. Every minute you waste costs this much money. You know, the pressure comes in. Huh. He said, I'm not wearing no dress, man. I'm funnier than a dress. Just give me something funny to say. I don't need to wear no dress to be funny. What am I, Milton Berle? You know, we're going like this. And then finally he's like, and he leaves. And then, like, the director comes, Dave, it really would be great if you wear the dress. What is wrong? What is this, Brokeback Mountain in here? So then, wear the dress. I don't want to wear the dress. I want to wear this dress. You know what I mean? This is, oh, gosh, this guy's so difficult. They leave. Now the producers comes, come on, David, would be so great. I mean, and then I started thinking about it. All the comics that I've seen, man, you know, strong brothers, why they be putting us in these dresses? But the minute it was clear, I was adamant, I'm not wearing a dress. I'm not wearing the dress. All right, fine. Think of something else. Guy comes back 10 minutes later, the whole new scene. Hot damn, how did you write the scene so fast? You know, it's like, so you got to take a stand.
It is a movement of social control to prevent the rise of another black messiah. In fact, back in the 1980s, there was a movement called the Federal Anti-Violence Initiative. If you remember, back in the 80s, there was a lot of attention being given to the allegation that black males had a gene that predisposed us to be violent. In other words, we wasn't violent because of racism. We wasn't violent because of miseducation. We weren't violent because of economic castration. We weren't violent because our fathers was being locked up and killed and taken from us. We was violent because we was born with a gene that made us this way. So because of the outcry from the black community, that movement went underground. It came back as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It came back as conduct disorder. It came back as oppositional defiant disorder. It came back as disruptive behavior disorder. Partly pushed by the federal government, partly pushed by the American Psychiatric and Psychological Association, and partly pushed by the drug companies. One thing we have to understand about these so-called disruptive behavior disorders, they are all social creations. There's nothing scientific about ADHD. There's nothing scientific about conduct disorder. These are diseases that our children are diagnosed with when they don't freely accept white supremacy. See, if I can't sit still because the information you've given me, I know is not what my spirit needs, I'm ADHD. If I don't allow you to disrespect me and belittle me in your classroom, I have a conduct disorder. If I refuse to sit still and hear negative information about myself and my ancestors, I have oppositional defiant disorder. These disorders are the outgrowth of a defunct educational system. And the drug companies are making $40 billion a year off of doping black boys with drugs that kill their brain cells, mess with heart function, mess with their kidneys, mess with their liver, and, Brother Dawa, most of these drugs also affect the development of healthy semen in the boy's testicles. So if you're giving a black boy Ritalin or Adderall or Cyclert or Prozac or Depakote or Paxil or any of the other ones from age of 3 or age of 5 to the age of 21, when he's ready to get married and have children, many of them won't be able to have children because the drug erodes their ability to father a child. It all goes back to eugenics. In fact, Ritalin, according to the Drug Enforcement Agency of America, is a Schedule II drug. You know what that means? No. It's just as addictive as crack cocaine. The DEA has Ritalin. Anybody who don't believe me, do your own research. The DEA classifies Ritalin as Schedule II, as addictive as crack. In fact, Ritalin is pharmacologically equivalent to speed. The illegal drug speed and Ritalin have the same chemical structure. Some drugs are legal, some drugs are illegal, but they're all being used to decimate the community. Two things. Number one, we already have light skin supremacy in the black community. Light skin supremacy is the rule of order for blacks. In other words, white supremacy, which is the parent of light skin supremacy, dictates that those who are of lighter hue must rule those who are of darker hue. That doesn't mean that if you're light skinned, you're a light skin supremacist. It just means that many of our light skinned brothers and sisters, not most or all, but many, do believe in light skin supremacy. And if you ascribe to light skin supremacy, you also believe in white supremacy, because that is where the foundational ideology comes from. So if I'm a light-skinned supremacist and I believe myself to be better than a brother who's darker, I must also, by default, believe that the white man is better than me. But along with light-skinned supremacy, there is a homosexual supremacy that's coming into the black community now. In fact, over the next 10 or 20 years, most black men in public office, most black men who are instructors on the collegiate level, most black men of influence and so-called power will be homosexual. The sister said it best, that the white man does not fear an effeminate black man.
Hold on. Say that again.
Yes, indeed. You're going to see the rule of homosexual supremacy in the black community. In other words, any black man of substance over the next 10 to 20 years must by necessity be a homosexual. If he's not, he will not be allowed to ascend within the power structure.
Damn.
Because the white man does not fear effeminate or homosexual black men. Because, and for all intents and purposes, the homosexual and effeminate black man is the white man's bitch, excuse my French.
No, go ahead.
And so we have to understand that. And that also means that when we raise our boys, we got to raise them as men. And one thing we have to understand, the reason why black women are mistreating the boys is because they are displacing the anger and rage and frustration that they have for the father onto the boy. And so what happens is he becomes, okay, the object of ridicule. She doesn't even know she's doing it unconsciously. But when she looks at him, all she sees is the father who did her wrong. And unfortunately, by mistreating her son, guess what? She keeps the cycle. It perpetuates. Because now he begins to scorn black women by the way his mother treated him.
Right.
So the cycle continues. See, the problem with the black community is that we continue the same failing cycles. Every time a new African baby is born, we have a chance to rewrite history. Every time a baby comes out. The problem is we don't raise the baby no differently than we was raised. So if I'm on drugs, now my son on drugs, my grandson on drugs. I'm a homosexual, my son's a homosexual, my great-grandson's a homosexual. Because it takes a lot of willpower and spiritual inclination to change what was done to us. And one of the reasons why black people continue to suffer the same sickness that we've been suffering since the end of slavery is because we are so interested in changing our environment, but we refuse to change ourselves.
Right now we turn our attention to the Soul Train gang, the Soul Train line, the master storyteller, Mr. Curtis Makefield, and the Show Enough False Speech Show, one he chose to call Get Down.
Reflect upon your natural mood. Get down, baby. Your creative mood shall express itself. Get down, baby. After life and desire, there is nothing left. We're all children of the world. A hungry man in search for a hungry girl. The extremes of pain of all cannibals. the most weighty and two-faced of all animals.